so very, very much for that question, Representative Horsford, and it really has been a joy working with you on the Ways and Means Committee. It's been an education, and it's also been an opportunity to do those things that you have indicated that are close to my heart, and that is to create some equities for women and children. I want to just thank Representative Sheila Jackson Lee for anchoring this extremely important conversation with the American people today. I really, one of the things that's been disturbing me about this entire debate is that people seem to really want to make some sort of bright line demarcation or differentiation between the bipartisan infrastructure bill that will create economic opportunities, get rid of those darned lead pipes, expand broadband, create good union jobs, help create some great jobs for guys, and that in the Build Back Better initiative, as if that is some sort of welfare, a giveaway, social spending, it's what it's referred to, a safety net. And so what I wanted to seek from you, a clarification from you, Mr. Horsford, is particularly since you were appointed by the Committee on Ways and Means, along with our colleagues, Representative Sewell and Gomez, to look at our racial equity issue. Of course we know that African Americans, Latinos are more likely to be poor, have greater wealth gap, lack of educational opportunity. So when we think that we are investing in their improvement, that somehow it is welfare. But I would sort of want you to take up the argument where you left it with regard to some of the economic problems that we're experiencing. There are major complaints in our country about a slowed down economic growth. What good is it to just grow the economy when only the people at the top get it? And it doesn't, excuse me, trickle down to Rosetta, who's making $10.25 an hour doing the hardest work on earth there is. You know, how does the earned income tax credit? I mean, we were taxing before we changed this policy to allow single, hard-working, essential workers that brought us food during the pandemic, stocked the shelves. We were taxing them into poverty. They had tax liability, the earned income tax credit expansion, going to work with no health care, no health insurance, being unable to afford it, not having child care, as you've mentioned, or expanded Pell Grants. Please explain how the Build Back Better plan really improves and buoys the economic platform upon which the country can improve. The workforce development initiatives that are in here. I was wondering if you could elucidate the connection between that and our economy and sort of diffuse this notion that it's just simply a safety net and welfare.
Well, thank you for yielding. My colleague from Wisconsin makes a very valid point, and I heard you over the weekend on one of the news outlets making the same point. Both of these bills are economic packages. I really resent, in fact, some of the inferences that have been made during this debate that somehow providing economic support for people to benefit and to fully participate in our economy is somehow an entitlement program. The child tax credit, for example, you talked about the earned income tax credit, I'll talk about the child tax credit. This is a tax program. It is not an entitlement program. Just like we give tax cuts to the very wealthy and the big corporations, that's what the Republicans did when they were in the majority. They spent the majority of their time trying to figure out how to provide 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, and a tax cut that some of the businesses didn't even ask for, the tax cut, as much as they got. Now Democrats are in charge, and what have we done? We started with the American Rescue Plan, and in that we provided a tax cut for middle-class families, the child tax credit, which actually has already lifted about 50% of children out of poverty.
Yeah.
Higher rates for Black, Latino, and Native American children out of poverty. And so now there was a debate a couple of weeks ago that we now need to put a work requirement means test, and we need to change the threshold to make people with lower income eligible, and those with higher incomes, like $90,000 is enough to not receive a child tax credit. I'm glad that President Biden rejected those ideas, but it was the Congressional Black Caucus that stood up and that said no, because this is an economic package, and we need to provide economic supports to families. The other part that you so ably noted is that what are some of the barriers that women face in the workforce? You've talked about this in our committee.
Personal.
Child care, health care, transportation. These are the basics that people need, particularly women. And who was the hardest hit during this pandemic and the recession? Women, and particularly women of color, Black women, Latinas, Native American women. And so if we're going to build back better, we need to do it in a way that's intentional about helping them and making sure that they're supported. I just want to share one story. Keenan, who's a constituent of mine, he's a young father in my district. And he wrote to me about how he is using that child tax credit, which is a tax cut, and that advance payment that we provided, that $300 a month. You know what he's using that money for? To buy healthy food for his daughter. And he said it may be only $300, but in the end, it's help that we're most grateful for. That's what this is about. When the Republicans gave the tax cut to the very wealthy, some of those corporations just went back and bought more stocks for themselves, made themselves wealthier, gave their CEOs bigger bonuses, didn't pay their workers more in wages, didn't expand health care, didn't provide child care, didn't make their workers feel valued. And now, because of that, many workers today are having a hard time. But yet, Democrats, through the Congressional Black Caucus, are standing up, and we're pushing back, and that's what the Build Back Better Act and the bipartisan infrastructure bill is all about. I'll yield.
It's going to be great, Madam Anchor. I don't know how much time we have, but I just want to say, I want to just join you, Mr. Horsford, in saying I'm really enthusiastic about voting for both these bills, because I do think that it's going to create a brand new environment for all of us, where we'll have workforce development training for these new technologies on climate, battery storage. I'm so proud of the African Americans who have been chairs of these committees, like Bobby Scott and Eddie Bernice Johnson, Maxine Waters, who put $150 billion in for housing. These things are going to, as you indicated, enable workers to truly participate in the economy. It's going to help companies, and we're going to build back better. I would yield back to the gentlelady from Texas.
Well, first of all, let me thank both Mr. Horsford and Ms. Moore for